It is Friday, March 11th here in Draft Shark Studios in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Matt Schaub, and I think we might just be making these Friday best ball shows a regular thing. Last week at this time, I sat down with Josh Larkey. Today, I've got a guest who is probably in a slow draft with you right now. He is a contributor of Football Guys. He is creator of BestBallRankings.com, and he is Eaglezzz in a best ball draft lobby near you in real life. He's James Brimacombe. James, thanks very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. It's nice to get on a few of these shows. It's nice to have actually best ball be promoted more. I just keep seeing more and more podcasts and more content, which is amazing. So I love seeing that.
It's really nice to have more drafting to do year round. I wish I had jumped into it with more force, before I did, but it's nice to be jumping in fully now. I have to confess something though, before we really dig in. The real reason I'm having you on is because a bunch of us have conspired to pull you out of live drafts during the day. We're going to have you on these shows to distract you so that you can't draft against us in those live draft rooms all the time.
Yeah, no, I could definitely use a break here and there sometime. Usually my breaks are actually on the weekend. So if you hit me on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're probably not going to see me in the lobbies much.
Oh, nice.
So usually like a Monday to Thursday, sometimes Friday drafter. So.
All right, so Saturday morning when I'm up and the wife's not yet, that's when I need to hit those draft rooms, especially because you're out west.
Yeah, you won't see me. Yeah, you're from Rochester. That's cool. I actually grew up in Ontario, Canada, so right across the lake. So
nice. So, what's the Eagles connection for you? How'd you become an Eagles fan?
Grew up huge hockey fan. My whole life was hockey as a kid. Yeah, I even played fantasy hockey when I was like 13 years old. With my buddies and. Just love that aspect of it. I have older brothers, 8 years older. He's a huge, we watched hockey together, but then he started watching football, NFL, and I just hang out kind of at his house, and he'd always have the games on Sunday. We'd just spend watching, I'd watch the Steelers. That was his favorite team. And then I just came across Randall Cunningham, watched him, and this is like, yeah, I don't want to be the Steelers fan like you. So went my own path, and from there, I've always kind of stuck with the Eagles.
That was the same era that pulled me into the Eagles. I didn't live in Philadelphia yet. I became a fan in that Randall Cunningham era, Reggie White, Seth Joyner, all those guys. And then a few years later, we moved to the Philadelphia area. So that just kind of solidified it. And shortly after we moved there began the Andy Reid portion of things. So, I mean, from that point, it was pretty easy to stick around.
Yeah, no, there's been definitely some good years. Got the Super Bowl in there, which was awesome too. So, and went to another Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's tough being an Eagles fan, but other times it's been all right the last few years, and a little bit of hope this year maybe.
I would say most teams fans have tough times built into just following a team. Jokes aside about pulling you out of draft rooms, the real reason I wanted to bring you on is not only are you a constant presence in these best ball drafts, Underdog, drafters, you're honestly one of the more positive presences that pops up on my Twitter timeline. Just like your Twitter bio picture, looks like Tom York trying to keep the world out, but then the personality of your Twitter feed is more like, guys, come play in the sandbox. Let's all see what we can build here.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, just huge Radiohead fan, so I've kind of just kept that avatar for a while, and I just kind of, I don't know, just kind of goes with. I guess I could put a picture of my face on there, but no one wants to see that.
I don't know. You could do the one with the Underdog ring that I used in the
oh yeah, yeah. I don't usually get too braggy or anything, so I always feel bad about those kind of pictures.
I can understand that. So I read though that you have been playing fantasy for more than 20 years. So in my same kind of age range there. Tell me about how you first got into best ball and what the early experience was of being in those best ball drafts.
I've worked for Football Guys maybe 9 years, something like that now. So yeah, they always have internal chats, just like Draft Sharks. I'm sure you have the same thing. And just a couple of guys are like, hey, I'm playing these best ball 10s, or I think that's what they were called at the time.
MFL 10s at that point, I think.
Yeah, MFL 10s. That's right. So. And I was like, all right, I'll check it out, And so I entered maybe like 10 of those drafts that year. I was like, this is kind of fun, Like I don't have to worry about waivers. I don't have to worry about a million trade offers. So I kind of played it. I think they were $10. So maybe I put $100 in 10 drafts and kind of liked it. And I think I got my $100 back at the end of the year. But it was like, oh, I didn't even expect that. So the next year, I think I maybe 10 times that, maybe played 100. And then draft came along. I'm wearing the shirt today, draft. So the good old days of draft. Represent those probably most of those Underdog employees right now are coming from draft, probably half of them. So but that really just opened my eye to what it could be. There was tournaments for best ball, there was bigger prizes, just the ease of doing it on my phone. Just I'm a busy I have a day job, I have a family, um, I have all those things. So time is just a constant constraint when you're doing fantasy football, and that's why we love it. We love to have that hobby. We love to have something away from all our commitments in life. So I loved having that aspect of fantasy football. But when I found best ball, it was more all of that plus the draft, which I love. So I could do the draft, I could work on strategy and kind of figure some things out. And then I just never had to worry about it again, and I could track those teams throughout the year. I just loved it. I thought it was really fun. And
Yeah, at this point, I'm like, why didn't we think of this earlier? Because obviously the draft has always been the best part of it. Whether you're getting together in person or
Mhm.
just competing on the computer against people. Um, I don't understand. I don't know why we didn't figure it out. We spent all these years doing mock drafts ahead of the season, and instead we could have been making them real drafts that then get scored throughout the year. Like that format was there. It just took so long for somebody to figure out how to monetize it, and then it's been pretty quick that it's grown to what it is now. I missed draft as well. That was, I think, what really got me into it, with the ease of it, being able to do it from your phone, having slow drafts, having tournaments. So, I think it's really, I don't want to say anything's a perfect way, because the perfect way to play fantasy football is the way that you like to play it, whatever
Mhm.
makes it interesting for you. But it's like it rewards good drafting. It builds in all the strategy. It's easy to do without, you're not going to lose because you didn't have time to hit waivers one particular week. So I've certainly become a bigger and bigger fan of it, and a little bit more willing to invest what it takes to play it too.
Yeah, and definitely there's a lot of smaller buy-ins too. So you can just dabble in it and it's fun. Like you don't have to draft all day long. You don't have to do what I'm doing to have fun and enjoy it. So yeah, I think it is new, and I think there's still a lot of ways to come. I think Dynasty Best Ball is going to kick off. I think there's a lot of different angles that are going to break off, and you're going to have more like hybrid redraft leagues and combined with best ball and a lot of that kind of thing. So people still like waivers and trades. I get
Mhm.
that. And I still think you could have that. And I think FFPC still has that aspect if you like best ball, but you also like the trading and the waivers here and there. So you know.
Yeah, if you love the in-season stuff, you don't have to give that up either to do this. You can draft these teams, and then when you get to the season, you're managing those teams. You don't have to worry about these. So yeah, from those early days, how have you kind of seen it, develop in the like 7 years, I think, since you started playing it, 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, so it's definitely grown, right? So you've seen DFS, you've seen it where it started, where it kind of there's a couple sites. Actually, when DFS first started, there's probably like 4 or 5 sites. There's a lot of little sites, right? And they just
Mhm.
kind of got kicked to the curb. So now I kind of see best ball similar, an avenue going down as DFS. So it's growing. There's more people coming in to play. People are friendlier and they're sharing on Twitter. They're getting people excited, and people are catching that wave and wanting to dive in on their own. Once you do a few drafts, you kind of get hooked. Much like DFS. Once it was all, I mean, DFS is still fun when you have that every week's a new week, right? So
Mhm.
but I think best ball too is going to get there where every week's going to have new tournament best ball drafts. We saw a little bit on DraftKings last year, so they offered that at weekly. They would
Mhm.
have week 2, week 3, week 4, like any week you could dive in for a whole new season, rest of season best ball. The way Underdog's growing, I don't know how they don't do that this year. I know they did one resurrection. I think it started like week 6, maybe something like that. But I can see a weekly kind of thing coming this year. So just the way I see it growing. So I think it's going to continue growing. It's only going to get bigger. So I think now there's going to be so many offerings. So you're going to have to be more picky and choose what works best for you, what kind of tournaments you like, look for structures that work better for you, different entry fees and whatnot. So there's going to be endless ways to play this year, I believe.
Yeah, I started doing some of those weekly DFS style drafts on both Underdog. I think Drafters had it too last season. I got to kind of figure out the level to which, like, how many entries you need to make into a tournament for that to make sense. But it's nice to have that aspect to play with because, I can't say that I love DFS in season because of, I don't know, I guess because it's missing the draft. Because once I started doing some of those weekly drafts, I was like, oh, if DFS is like this, where I get the draft, I like it now. So I agree that there's more growth in that area. Has it become harder to win for you in the years that you've been playing more and more best ball?
So I don't know. Like
it hasn't felt that way.
Yeah. So I like best ball. I play all the sports in best ball. I play all the contests. So I kind of view it as like a savings account to my next. But at the end of the day, my main portfolio is going to be NFL. But at the same time, I like the aspect of DFS where it's like you're constantly playing. So I find the same thing in best ball, but maybe it's like yesterday I started looking at MLB's best ball they have the button and everything on Underdog. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start this. And then down the line, I'm going to have some money when those cash out. So I do that with all the sports. The NFL playoffs was probably one of the most fun contests you could play. People are hammering those drafts, and then that's actually probably the most success I've had playing best ball. So I'm kind of looking for those kind of tournaments and angles and kind of things that people. So the best ball, is growing. There's more people out there. There's more people sharing content. There's more information for everybody. So everybody's kind of getting the same kind of information and the same rankings, the same ADP. So I'm trying to look how I can make that work for myself and kind of twisting it a little bit and seeing what works best. So
yeah, it certainly worked for you in those 2 playoff contests on both Drafters and Underdog. Congrats publicly on your big wins there.
Yeah, that was stuff like that makes it easier to tell your wife that, hey, I'm spending this much time doing this stuff and pulling away from the family. So
yeah, I don't know about you, but sometimes I try to kind of turn my phone away so nobody can see just how many drafts I'm doing at a time.
yeah, it's kind of embarrassing at times.
So I know that you put out your own rankings for free, which is absurd. You should stop doing that. You should make people pay for them. But how much are you following your own rankings as you do all these drafts?
I would say probably 70% of the time, maybe. So it depends. So that's kind of like a loaded question where I feel like every draft room is different, every situation's different. And to be honest, on a typical day I'm drafting, I'm probably doing, I don't know, like 5 to 20 drafts maybe. So, and I'm reading news, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm kind of doing it all on the side where I'm doing other things. So it's kind of not like my main focus, but I'm kind of doing, like, some people work from home, right? And they're watching TV shows and they're doing other things as they're doing their work. So I'm kind of doing the same, but just as the fantasy angle and the best ball drafts. So as news comes in, as things I see in the draft rooms, I switch my rankings. I change them up probably 3 to 5 times a day when I'm actively drafting. So my rankings are just kind of like a work in progress constantly. So the reason I give my rankings or whatever for free is because they're constantly changing. So it's kind of like a baseline. It's not something I would, 3 days later after I post something like that, I was like, yeah, you kind of have to kind of go with the flow and kind of see what you're seeing in the draft rooms and what you believe and kind of move players up and down. So and that's why I love Underdog, because constantly on their app or on their website, you can do that with ease. I wish they had like a little bit better import export kind of features on there, so you could have 10 different kinds of rankings. So it's just like one standard ranking you're throwing on their site right now, which I wish you could be like, oh, I want to draft heavy wide receivers, or I want to draft this kind of style, and you could have different kind of rankings. So, but I think all those things are coming. Like there's going to be a lot of different new tools, and they're investing more in their websites, all these sites. But yeah, it's so fun right now.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I'm joking about sharing rankings. It's cool to see
Yeah.
stuff like that happening on Twitter. To me, the rankings are kind of like, especially early, you follow them a little bit more to show where you value guys and target players. But I think the further you get in, it becomes a bit more driven by kind of like if then thinking, as opposed to straight rankings. Like, round 7, it's not like, no, you shouldn't take this running back because I have this one ahead of him that's still also available. It's more like, well, I have Lamar Jackson, so I should go ahead and take Marquise Brown right now and reach over these other wide receivers I might like better. Or, I have these guys on my roster. If Will Fuller stays healthy and lands in a good spot, he could be huge. Whereas if he's not, he's going to be way down here, and I'm more in position to buy the, rocket ship part of that than I am worried about the basement. So I'm going to go ahead and move him up for this draft. So I guess, are you kind of operating in that similar way where you're, changing things in a draft, it sounds like, and assessing on the fly based on what you have, what's available, just, the whole landscape?
Yeah, 2 degrees on that. Yes. I've said this a lot of times. I'm more of a value drafter, so I'm looking for those values. So that's why I like to look at ADP. I like to look at my own rankings. I like to compare the two. You can easily, if you do that, you can easily see like who right now in ADP is overranked or overvalued and then undervalued. And you can kind of pick that out. Even when people are undervalued though, you want to be careful. You don't want to draft that player because you haven't ranked 2 rounds higher. You don't need to draft him 2 rounds higher. So you can kind of play with it. Like, you know what? I can wait on him and I can still get him another round later, even though I think you're getting value constantly throughout the draft. I think tiers, I don't think we talk enough about tier ranking in best ball. I kind of, when I'm setting my own rankings on the Underdog app, you'll see I'll have like 15 wide receivers all just bunched together. And then maybe a few running backs or whatnot. So then when I'm actually doing my drafts, it's my turn in the 8th round. I have like 2 running backs, or I don't know, 3 running backs and 3 receivers on my team at that time. I can look at my rankings and I can see, oh, there's 8 wide receivers I have ranked here and 1 running back in the middle of those. I'm going to take that running back because I have a chance those 8 receivers are going to fall to the next round to me. So I'm always looking for those kind of angles just to kind of see how my construction works. And the best way to do that, and I'm not saying like throw your money away doing this. You're going to want to enter a small dollar tournament, but really just before bed, or you feel like you have good ranking set up, just put like 3 or 4 drafts on auto draft and go to bed and wake up and then analyze those drafts. And you will see trends. You'll see those teams look almost identical, and you can kind of see what other people are doing and go through them, and you can kind of customize your rankings. So I do that kind of stuff a lot too. I don't know if that.
I've seen you mention that before. I've thought about it. I'm not sure I've quite gotten to the point of having the guts to put my $10 in or 5 or whatever and not be in control of the team, but I can definitely understand the upside of doing so.
Yeah, and I think maybe you do for one on a $5 entry, and just to kind of for research purposes. But for the record too, I'm not like a huge stacker, so I'm more chasing value than my stacks, which probably is not good on my part. So I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to get the middle, like what everyone else is telling me on the outside and all this information that's coming into me. It's telling me to draft a certain way and what is optimal and blah, blah, blah. But because I'm such a volume drafter, I don't feel like I have to go by all those things because all my teams will look exactly the same, and they're going to look exactly the same as everyone else if I do that. Like, it doesn't make sense for me. So I
So,
don't know.
so I had that down to get to the stacking question in particular.
Mhm.
Is this a matter of not finding that stacking matches with drafting for value? Is it a matter of not trying to stack because now everybody else is? What's bringing you to your current feeling on stacking?
So let's go back to say, uh, okay, I don't know how to word this one. I do agree with stacking. I
Uh-huh.
do like it. I do it, but that's not my number one focus. I just feel
Mhm.
like that is most people enter best ball draft and they do a little bit of research and they read a few articles, they listen to a video or whatever. That's the first thing that will come up. Stacking. You need to stack, you need to stack. And then you go to a draft lobby and that is the whole draft room. Everyone's doing that. So everyone's doing the exact same thing. So not that I'm trying to be like crazy different or anything like that. And I still will stack. I'll look for more value stacks. I'll look for if I get Lamar Jackson, I don't need to reach on Marquise Brown. Maybe I go Bateman later, or maybe it's like a Gus Edwards or something different.
Mhm.
So I I think stacks can still fall to you. I'm not willing to take like a Marquise Brown when there's I don't know like a Mike Evans there or somebody like that. I'd rather take Mike Evans and maybe I get Marquise Brown next round. But if somebody else grabs him, I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I agree with that level of, I don't know if anti-stacking is the word, but not reaching to make the stack because then you're giving away the value that you would be adding by stacking because you're reaching over better players to complete that stack. I find myself gravitating more toward later value stacks, kind of the point you just made. I know that Trevor Lawrence with his receivers have been one that
Mhm.
I've done, a bunch of times. We can get Trevor Lawrence, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, Dan Arnold, and I'm not saying I'm putting all those guys together on one
Right.
roster, but all those options are available later. Where even if you miss out on one, there's another or one other available. Tua and Devontae Parker is another one where they're available late enough that you don't have to reach for anybody to make it happen. I wonder if the format of specifically a big board right now and some other best ball tournaments that follow the same format where it's a typical regular season, but then we get to a point where it becomes 1 week elimination rounds. To me, that seems to make stacking a little bit more important. You still don't want to reach too far, but I think there's a bit more value in that if your quarterback or wide receiver goes off that week and you don't have the quarterback or wide receiver, all of a sudden you're probably going up against people that do have that stack. And for the 1 week aspect, it seems to make it just a little bit more important. Do you find yourself adjusting that at all for that kind of format?
No, definitely 100% because I've saw that this year. So I was in the finals against teams like that, right? And yeah, the Burrow and Chase and the Burrow and Higgins, like you needed those combos. Yeah, I'm trying to adjust all the time. I'm trying to learn. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to listen. I'm not one that you're gonna get on a show or on Twitter, and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna be one like this is the way it is. This is the way it's gonna be always. You're doing it wrong, like that's not me. You're never gonna get that with me. I want to hear everyone's point of view. Um, that's kind of how I learn how I play best ball. I want to do so I'm still doing stacking, so probably 50% of the time, and sometimes I'll reach on the stacks, and sometimes I won't. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. Like, I believe in stacking, but I also
Uh-huh.
don't think it's 100% right.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to ask you about it because I know that we kind of joked back and forth about it on Twitter before, and I'm sure that you're not 100% against stacking, which wouldn't make a
No.
whole lot of sense. So that's why I'm curious to get your thoughts. Because the other thing is, that, like you said, if you're drafting the same way that everybody else is, then you're not really getting an edge by doing that. So it is important to take in what other people are doing and assess what you should be doing. I mean, I know that when I first got into doing fantasy advice, I think most people, when you get into it, you do it because you're confident enough in the way you're doing things that you feel like you can give people value by telling them how to do something. And at some point, you have to kind of figure out the line between telling them the way to do it and talking about what's more likely to help, but also, assessing everything along the way. So I like what you're saying about that, because maybe it's me getting older and softer now that I have kids and everything, but it is important to take in everything and apply it somehow. And applying it doesn't mean that you necessarily follow it to a T in your own drafting, but even just knowing what other people are doing, maybe sometimes it makes you do the opposite, because then you're going to be different from what you're drafting against.
No, definitely not all the time do it that way, but yeah, just try to think a little differently. Try to think, like, I don't know. I get bent out of shape sometimes when I'll post like, "Hey, Nick Chubb, awesome value. It's 2-3 turn," and then it's like, "What? He's the worst value. It's the second round. Why would you ever take him? There's no upside." Blah blah blah. It's like, well, he could lead the whole league in rushing yards, and they have no pass catchers in Cleveland, so I don't mind it actually. And like things like that, I'll get a little bent out of shape, and yeah, all right, I'm drafting Chubb 101 just for fun a couple times. But it's not like I don't know. Yeah, there's tons of different. My wife she always wants to fight with me, right? That's just not. I was like, oh yeah, I see your side, but here's my side too. So both sides are right. So whatever you want to go with that.
I definitely annoy my wife and probably my daughters at this point by hearing something and being like, yeah, but maybe that other person meant this. And you're like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, you're right. Maybe they didn't. I'm just saying maybe they did. Maybe this is happening. It's important, and obviously not only in best ball, it's important to kind of take everything in, to think about different things that are going on, and assess all of it. Now, one other thing that adds a challenge is all these different tournament types, and we've had a couple of different ones come up on Underdog already this early in the year. We're currently in the Big Board Plus Superflex. There was the backyard format. It looks like you're just ready to jump into whatever kind of tournament they throw out. Is that true, or are there any that you back off and wait and see?
So my main advice on this, I gave it to a friend just on Twitter. Lots of friends on Twitter, right? but we have a kind of this Underdog degen group that we're always chatting about this stuff. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to play this backyard or whatever. I don't have any funds in there right now. I got to wait till like everything comes back and pays out. They're like, what do you mean you're not going to do it? You always told me like first tournament comes out, you need to like just jump in and go crazy the first day before like the next day ADP is going to adjust, right? And I thought about it for a minute. Yeah, you're right. So then what I do? I did like 40 drafts first day. So I think you always want to do that, especially in these kind of new formats like the backyard, those rookies and sophomores. Like there's no information out there. Nobody knows. And the ADPs are just, they threw them out there just like, hey, this is right from Underdog. We're not going to tell you where you should draft players, So you gotta figure that out. I remember last year when they did the rookies, sophomores, it's kind of a fun format. It's like, oh, this is different. This is fun. And I dove right in and I was like, Justin Herbert, he's got to be the 101 on this, right? And he was like, at the time when he first came out, he was being drafted like, I don't know, second or third round, like 12th overall. And then after like a week, it adjusted. People caught on. I've just talked about it on Twitter a little bit too, like different contest types, the bully QB, where you just hoard that whole position. Not like you're trying to be an a-hole on blocking other drafters, but it's just the construction of your own team. It gives you the best chance. Quarterback's the highest scoring position, and there's only a limited amount of quarterbacks. So why not get 3 quarterbacks or whatever and lock them in? And you're just way ahead of the field. Like it's simple things like that. You got to do a few drafts. You got to figure it out, and you got to understand the scoring, the roster limits, look at all the rules, look at the advance rates. Like some of those Underdog tournaments, it's like 2 out of 6 are advancing in the first round. So you can take maybe a little more risk in those, but if it's like 1 in 6, you kind of have to adjust, and maybe it is that bully style that you're just like, I'm going to hoard this position. No one else is going to score points at quarterback or tight end or whatever. So different things like that. I think these new tournaments, you want to get in them early, and then maybe you just do it the first few days and then you back off and kind of see how the rest of the community adjusts to it and kind of readjust after that.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I attack them.
Especially snatching those quarterbacks in that format where it's not obvious that you need the quarterback value, or it's not obvious that they're going to be scarce. The Superflex, I think it's a little bit more obvious the importance of quarterbacks, and we're seeing them go, early as they should now in those big board Superflex drafts. Have you kind of arrived at a primary build for that particular tournament, whether it be numbers at each position or when you're targeting or any of that? Obviously, I think it's dictated somewhat by where you are in the draft order, which gets evened out if you're doing a bunch of drafts. But do you have a primary build that you're going with?
So my brain's just like all over the place. Redraft, Superflex. Like I've never done Superflex before, but obviously first day I dove into that. I wish I did more first day, to be honest. I wish I would have entered like 50 or 100 slow drafts, to be honest, because the quarterbacks they went crazy. So like basically now if you're entering that contest, you just take 3 quarterbacks by round 4 almost. That's it's basically you just draft your quarterbacks and then start the draft after that. That's how that tournament's turned out, in my opinion. I still like it, but I think it's kind of set now. So it's kind of ADPs are more set and people are going to all do the same and teams are all going to look the same. So the first few days you definitely had an advantage in that format, I believe.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant to jump in because I was like, I don't know, Superflex a little bit tougher to just kind of figure out the values on the fly. I don't really have my rankings set yet for 2022. And then, 2 days later, it's like, man, I should just jump in and winged it for a little while because after a couple of days, people are going to kind of have it figured out.
Yeah, that's how I've thought about that in past tournaments. So that's why because you're saying that, everyone else is saying the same thing. Like there's no Superflex rankings out there that anybody has. There's no really, unless you've played Superflex in another format, you don't really know how to construct a team. So the information it's hard to come by. But now I think it's kind of people have thrown their 2 cents in and people have kind of done a few drafts and they kind of know where they're sitting with it. So I would honestly now, and maybe this is bad because I think there's maybe a couple strategies to do the Superflex, but I think you could just draft 3 quarterbacks straight up, like the best 3 quarterbacks every round, and then start your draft.
Like the first 3 rounds take quarterback, you mean?
Yep. And then to start the rest of your draft, or you just take all the stud players, and then by like round 10, you try to grab 5 or 6 quarterbacks. Just whatever's left, and you hope you get 2 or 3 starters. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say one way to try to differentiate there still is, depending on the draft position, but get one of those studs early, maybe take the second in the range of like, I don't know, Baker Mayfield, or even a little bit before that, where it's somebody you know is going to be a starter all season, but is going to stick around on the board for a while. And then 3 or even 4 of the young, either backups or incoming rookies. And you just hope that 1 or 2 of those guys really pops this year. And then in the meantime, you're snapping up the closer to stud level players at the other positions that are sliding because of the quarterback frenzy.
Yeah, I think both ways to do that and your way you just mentioned. Yeah. So I don't think there's like a ton of different ways to draft in that. But I think there's probably maybe 3 or 4 viable ways to do it. And what I would tell people is too, like get in a few drafts and then look for like the Eric Bimfor and look for Justin Herzig and see how they're drafting. I'm not saying copy their drafts, but just see what they do and you're going to learn a lot. And they post a lot too. They post how they're doing, how they're approaching these things, and they're going to share with you as well. But that's usually what I'm doing my own style, but then I'm also reevaluating, looking at other people and then readjusting. So,
yeah, I mean, it's the same as reading other people's content. Seeing how they draft is going to tell you something about how they play in the field, just like their words about how to do it. Player exposures are a big thing. And player exposure, like, what, 5 years ago, player exposure didn't mean anything. Like I had never even heard of it as a term. Now all of a sudden we're building portfolios of players, and I obviously understand why it matters. So how closely, and I think this is more of a non-super flex question because you talked about the difference of drafting in this one, but let's talk about the regular big board tournament or other similar redraft one quarterback, standard kind of lineup tournaments. How closely are you tracking your player exposures within a particular tournament to make sure that you don't get too much of a guy, or maybe getting as much as you want of a guy? Are you aware of that? How aware are you of that going through the tournament?
I definitely look at my exposures throughout the week, few times. I adjust my rankings off of it. If I have, say, like, I don't know, Josh Jacobs and J.K. Dobbins, like side by side of my rankings, and maybe I'm, 15% on Josh Jacobs, but only 2% on Dobbins. Like, it's probably good to flip those in my rankings. Little things like that. So I'm kind of looking through where players, same position, are side by side, but I am like 10% off on one player opposed to the other. Like, I feel like I made those mistakes ever since I started playing BestBall. I continue to make them. I'm still making them this year, but I got burned last year by a few players because I draft so early and so often, and throughout the whole, like right after Super Bowl, I just keep drafting. So I had a lot of J.K. Dobbins. I had a lot of Irv Smith Jr. I had a lot of Cam Akers. Like, those are three of my highest owned players in BestBall last year. So it kind of, when they get injured in the middle of the summer and you don't even have a chance, you get an automatic 0 in the draft capital you put in those. You just look at that and it's like, I could have had all these similar players. Like, that's fine if I like that player, but I don't need to be 25% on Cam Akers. Like, I could have been more like 12%, and evened it out with a few other players. Like, things like that I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to track. There's not like a great tool out there. You manually have to do a lot of this stuff. You basically want to take your player ownership and you want to take your own rankings or ADP and you want to line them all up, kind of make your own spreadsheets and things like that to see where you'll see the differences. You're like, oh man, I have 0 of this player. Do I hate him? Well, look at the reasonings why you're doing it. So I'm still learning on there. I try to set like kind of small areas where I don't want to go over 30% on a player. I've tried to dial that down to more like 20 to 25% on players that I love.
So that's like basically your upper threshold is 20-25%. You don't want to go above that on anybody.
That's pretty much where I'm at. I say if you're drafting over 100 drafts, that's what I would do. So
yeah, it might be the toughest part, really, is because fantasy is all about picking the players that you want and avoiding the players you don't want. So I mean, even outside of fantasy football, it's tough to say, you know what, sometimes I'm wrong. So we all have to realize that, and it's not something that you do if you're drafting 1 or 3 fantasy teams a year. But now if you're drafting hundreds, you have to take some players that you don't like because you're going to be wrong sometimes. And if you're wrong on 3 key players that you like this year, for whatever reason they got injured or whatever, then it's a much different year than if you just hedged your bets to some degree on a couple of those guys.
No, 100%. And I think end of draft players, so like maybe rounds 15 to 20, those players too, I don't want to be 20% on any of those players. Like, I think it's better even to be more like 10%, even on the players that you love in that range. There's just so many players. They're all similar. I'm 100% wrong though. Like, if you're on St. Brown, you loved him last year and you just went 50% on him, like, you're going to win. Like, I can't predict that. Like, I can't pick that player out of this 2022 draft in those late rounds that's going to do that. So I don't want to be 50%, but I would like to have 10%, where maybe last year I only had like 2% of St. Brown, So I want to mix and match more of those kind of players later in my drafts, and kind of not be too low and not too high on those type of players.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly matters less the farther you get into a draft, because if you lose your 14th round pick on, 50% of your teams, it's probably not going to kill your chances of making money. But if you took this guy 50% of the time and the guy going right after him 0%, and that's the guy that pops, then you're going to lose out. So, yeah, I agree. That's one thing that one player that I really like so far, just for value, is Chris Carson. And I clearly draft him knowing that there's a chance his neck is done, and we find out in July that he can't play football anymore because it's not safe. So I know that that's a possibility. I also know that the upside is if the surgery worked and he's Chris Carson this year, I got a team's lead running back, a team that likes to run the ball a lot, in the 13th or 14th round a lot. So I'm still trying to work on balancing that, and frankly, I'm way on the other side of the scale from what you're talking about. If we find out in July that Chris Carson's not playing this year, I'm going to be sad, and I'm probably going to stop potting for a little while. But it is important to find that balance. Something I'm still working with, but at the same time, I don't want to work too far the other way. I think I would rather chase the ceiling on a guy like that than worry too much about the basement.
Yeah, I won't get into my Chris Carson because I don't want to hurt your feelings.
No, I'm totally open. If you look at the Draft Sharks rankings right now, it looks like we collectively hate Chris Carson. That's because I tried talking the other guys into it, and they're like, "Nah, his neck hurts."
Yeah, so I view best ball, and I think Underdog going to 20 rounds is a little bit better for taking a few shots on guys like Carson, maybe. But 18 rounds, it's like, that was my rule. I'm not taking any players that are injured, coming off like a serious injury, and like so many question marks. Like, we just don't know. Like, all summer long, it's just going to be a question. Like, I don't think we're ever going to know his health until week 1, maybe. Like, I just don't want a player like that on my team. And I don't know. So that I've learned that lesson over the few years, because I've took those chances. And I know if it hits, it's going to hit big for you, right? Like, you're going to get a guy that has potential to get double-digit touchdowns, depending where he goes. And if he goes to a bigger team too, like, even better. So I get the risk that's involved there, and it could pay off. But I've learned to not. I want to make everyone best ball. There's no waivers, no trades, no nothing. You draft that player, you're stuck with them all year. So I kind of had this rule last year where it's like, I only want to draft players I know actually are going to be playing in week 1. Like, I know right this day when I'm drafting that they will be playing, 100% chance. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I didn't want to take a 0. I've kind of dialed off that a little bit. I'll take some more chances. I don't like to take guys coming off injuries as much unless they fall. If they fall like 2 or 3, 4 rounds, then I'll throw them on my team. And I've been backing off on older players, so I'm trying to, unless they're quarterback. Obviously, quarterback's the one that, like, running backs and receivers. Yeah, running backs especially, like, their window is just so much smaller. There's so many running backs. Every team feels like they're going through 3 or 4 running backs a year. So I don't know. It's a hard position for me to figure out.
Oh yeah, it's totally fair. And it's been a better idea lately to back away from a running back that's older on his second contract, a free agent, whatever, than it is to bet on that guy. There's definitely a chance that, we get to even August and people are like, told you should have shut up about Chris Carson. But it's fair to back away from a guy with questions like that. And we've already seen a clear example of that in Calvin Ridley, in that he was out of football. He looked like a value. He was one of my higher owned wide receivers in early drafts. And I'm not talking about huge volume, but there are some teams that have 4th round Calvin Ridley on them that I am praying that something magical happens to them so that they're not zeros right now. So, that's definitely a risk worth calculating as you're figuring out whether you want to bother with the guy.
Yeah, no, the Ridley situation, that's just bad luck. There's nothing you can do about that. Like, we're gonna have like probably 3 or 4 more stuff like that. It's just gonna kind of come out of nowhere, and players done, and you get a 0. But yeah, like a 4th round player, that it's always tough. That's tough, and injuries are gonna happen too. And it's kind of the name of the game. Like you'll get down, like you'll as soon as a guy gets injured, you check his ownership. You're like, I'm 18% on this guy, and then you're like, I'm not drafting for the next 3 days. Like it takes you a few days to get over it, and then like, all right, back at it, But
I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of pushing the other way where I'm like, crap, now I got to go make up for those Calvin Ridley teams. I guess I'm spending today drafting. Don't bother me, kids.
yeah, no, I get that sometimes, but I
So
usually need it.
besides Chris Carson, are there any other players that you're particularly avoiding right now?
Oh, so I put my fade list. And let's. Do you want me to talk about the players I like or the ones I'm fading
Let's
first?
hit them both.
Okay, well, let's start with the bad guys first, the fades. So I made a quick list of like Jameis Winston. I think his ADP is like 77 in Superflex, and like that's insane. I'd rather have Davis Mills. I'd rather have Garoppolo. I don't know, Goff, Baker, all those guys way over Winston. Like we don't coming off the injury, and it seems like no team really. I don't know. There's no news out there on him, but he's a fade for me. Jameson Williams, one of the rookies. I'm fading him over a lot of the other rookies. I imagine and that's the thing. It's probably going to bite me because, like a Jameson Williams, he's probably a great pick for these tournaments because halfway through the year, even if he doesn't play the first 8 games, then you have him on your roster, and then he comes in the second half of the year and dominates. You're going to miss out right there. So that one's going to probably bite me. Beckham Jr. I'm fading. Irv Smith, Gronkowski. I just don't think it's worth it. Logan Thomas, Chris Carson, and I had James Robinson. James Robinson kind of the same as Chris Carson. And my other one is I was fading Ridley as well. Just there's too many. Like it was just so weird last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of been fading him. I think Will Fuller's kind of like in that situation too. Like I get like it's worth the gamble probably, but Deshaun Watson's kind of maybe worth the gamble. Another big name is Michael Thomas. Like I don't know what to do with him. And when I have players I just don't know what to do, I often will drop them in my rankings and let other people draft them and they can deal with it. So those are kind of players on my list of fades that are bigger names.
Yeah, and I can understand that with Will Fuller. He's kind of like a 5% guy for me. I want to get some just in case we get healthy Will Fuller for 12 games, and I can also understand being totally out on him. Calvin Ridley, it's obviously bad luck that he got caught betting on the NFL. None of us could have known that because we just saw the report that the Eagles were trying to trade for him, and the Falcons are like, actually, we're going to hold off on that trade now because something.
Yeah, that was nice of them.
So I mean, it is bad luck, but obviously it's a guy with red flags. So I mean, I chose to ignore those red flags. It bit me. There were red flags with Michael Thomas last year. I took him some, so that came back to bite me. Otherwise, I'm with you on that list, which sounds like primarily guys with big injury questions and, the kind of questions where even if they're fully healthy by the start of the season, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're then set up for success. Like I mentioned yesterday, I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before, but I'm not drafting Jameis Winston at all right now. He's coming off an ACL tear. He's a wild card when fully healthy. He has no contract. I have no idea what 2022 is going to look like for Jameis Winston, and I'm not worried that he's going to come back and be QB5. So I don't care about the risk on missing out. Jameson Williams, and not just him, but that's kind of a rookie profile that I tend to avoid in general in fantasy, is a guy coming off, especially a late season serious injury. Might he be fine for the season? Might he be close to full strength? Maybe, but you're already talking about a rookie who's, it's already more likely that they have a tough time getting used to the league than that they're just a stud right away. Now you're adding in the significant injury he's got to rehab from. We don't know what team he's going to yet, so he might even land in a bad situation. So to me, I don't even feel bad about skipping that one because there are so many other receivers, and especially because he's going, decently early. He's been in the wide receiver 40s. I'm not sure where he is right now on Underdog, but he's been a total avoid for me so far too.
Yeah, he just feels like one of those guys that maybe he's going to bite you, right? Like maybe for these tournaments, the top heavy tournaments, like if he's a guy maybe at the end that's fully healthy for that playoff stretch, like he might be a difference maker. But yeah, it's still going to cost you, like you said, and it's going to cost you in your draft. Like he's not dirt cheap. Like he's still, and there's still players around him that are going to give you a floor and a ceiling sometimes for you. So it's worth taking them in a best ball roster maybe. But for tournaments, he's like on my maybe list.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how much he climbs if he's healthy like this summer, because I doubt that he's going to be in the 20s or maybe even high 30s. So maybe he's somebody that you can make up for June or July drafts if things are looking better by that point.
I kind of put him in the Waddle from last year. Like I was kind of off Waddle just because there seemed like a few question marks. I was like, I don't want to make that mistake again. So, but I think it's a later injury and everything too. So.
And that's one of the mistakes we can make is, overcompensating for something we did wrong last year by trying to make sure we don't do the same thing if we tell ourselves that it's a similar situation this year. So I try to not let myself do that. Like, make sure that I draft Mark Andrews this year now that he's going in round 2, just because I didn't take him last year when he was going in late round 4 or 5.
No, I like that. No.
All right. So what about the favorite targets?
Favorite targets. So Superflex kind of messed my brain messed everything up, right? But as far as quarterbacks go, like in a regular standard best ball draft, I think Justin Fields is probably my favorite. I think he's still undervalued. I think he just has. I like the Bears, like in general. I don't know why. I just kind of like them as a breakout team this year. But I think Fields isn't so crazy. And kind of when we're talking about stacking, I think Mooney and Kmet are decent ways to work. I'm kind of anti-stacker, so maybe I go the Bears with Fields and Mooney and Kmet. So I don't mind that. Quarterback, I also think it's not always about getting the best players in best ball. Obviously, you want to have the best players, but you can build a quarterback position with certain players. So guys like Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, they're names that people don't like, right? They kind of fell off last year or did something that maybe like, oh, they didn't win for their team or they messed up one play, and people like latch onto that and they don't want a piece of Carr, Tannehill, or Cousins. Where I feel like if I drafted a team and only had those 3 quarterbacks in best ball, I'm pretty confident. Like you have pretty good ADP, you're not overdrafting them, so that means the rest of your team's going to be pretty loaded, and you only have to start one, and one of those guys is going to do well each week and be like a top 10 QB. So I kind of like that to go on quarterbacks. I like looking for values later. Running backs that I really like, and this is why I haven't been drafting Chris Carson and James Robinson, because I like players like Justin Jackson. I like Keyshawn Vaughn. I like those kind of players that I think have a little bit more upside, and you don't know the situation, but there's also a gamble there, right? So Carson and Robinson have proved it in the past. These guys have not proved it, but I like the opportunity. That's I'm kind of gambling more on the opportunity. And they have some, and Elijah Mitchell's another name, Damian Harris. Javonte Williams, he was the guy I just took every second in the second round constantly. I think he'll be a first round pick now, though, with Russell Wilson and all the Broncos love. And Javonte Williams will probably be actually like top 6 overall pick by August.
He's been funny because early on there were drafts where he would go 2nd or 3rd overall. And then we got rumor that Melvin Gordon wants to be back. The Broncos want him back, and people are like, I guess we have to wait on Javonte Williams, and he's in round 2. It's an example of, it's just kind of funny to watch the ebbs and flows as news comes out in the best ball draft rooms. So I took some Javonte early. I thought I kind of backed off of him a little bit, just because I guess I got my shares, and I also like other running backs in that range. He's going to be interesting to watch, though. I think if you really want Javonte Williams, I would try to draft him between now and Tuesday when we start to find out where running backs are going to land, because if Melvin Gordon does re-sign with the Broncos, then I certainly think Williams probably deserves to slide some.
Yeah, if Gordon stays, then he's probably going to be drafted in the middle of the 2nd round, right? Like that's kind of where or first, like in that middle first part of the 2nd round. But just all the stuff you're saying about him, it reminds me 100% of Jonathan Taylor last
Yep.
year. Like that, they're not the exact same kind of running back, but I feel like the situation's a little bit the same. Like people were so all off season last year, Jonathan Taylor, oh, he's going to be like the 101. Oh no, all this situation, middle of the second round. Like it was just flip flop the whole year. So that's kind of, I'm not saying it's the same situation, but I'd like to get some Williams right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see Jonathan Taylor's situation in that as well. And I was off Jonathan Taylor when he was going, 105 to 107 range,
Mhm.
like early drafting last year. I thought it was too early. And now I'm like, well, I'm not going to say that Javonte Williams is Jonathan Taylor because even Jonathan Taylor, we couldn't count on that kind of season. But he has similar things going for him. Very good runner, could be a feature back if things break right for him. So I'm definitely not going to dismiss this being a terrific season for him.
No, 100%. Wide receiver is Devontae Smith. He's probably my top one. That's a little bit biased as Eagles fan, probably. Another one that's biased, T. Higgins. He won me a lot of money, so I've been drafting him second round every time I can get him. Deontay Johnson, Pittsburgh. Feel like we don't know the quarterback situation, so I think he's just devalued by a round or two. Like I think he's just a star wide receiver and it's just going to give you points every week. So I like him. DJ Moore, kind of the same as Johnson. I like KJ Osborne, the Vikings. I like him. I like getting him stacked with Cousins occasionally. Rondell Moore is another one of the ones I think is really undervalued right now for the Cardinals. I just think Kirk's probably gone. Moore is a rookie. Like they tried to get him involved last year, but you could just tell like he was still pretty young and raw, but he still showed glimpses. So I just think this year he's going to be like a huge riser for that team. We don't know how much Hopkins has left. Like I could see by the end of 2022, like drafting next year, like Rondell Moore is probably going to be like a top 5 round pick, I would think. I like Juju a little bit. I think there's some value there. Just kind of banking on where he falls in free agency. And some of those rookie receivers like Gabe Wilson, I think is worth a shot. I think after the draft, all these rookie high ends that are going to get drafted in the first round, all their values are going to go up a round or two. So I'd get them now if you could. Tight end, I got Komet. I got Brevin Jordan on Houston, Njoku, Cleveland. I like Hunter Henry. I like Dallas Goedert. And then some late round guys, Parham on the Chargers. Like, I don't know what they're doing with the tight end situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Tyler Conklin's like a decent gamble too. I think he'll get a decent contract somewhere and contribute. So those are kind of some of the players that I've been drafting and have higher ownership on.
And the big thing about a lot of those tight ends is that they're like tight end 3 types. So you're not taking them in a range where you need them to do something, but you're taking them in a range where if they do something nice, then it's particularly adding value.
Yeah, and that would be one of my main strategies is I hate tight end. I have for years. And now with 20 rounds, it's even better because I can just draft 3 or 4 with my last 3 or 4 picks. Like don't even look at the tight end position, all draft and just spend your last 3 or 4 picks on tight end. Try it once. It's pretty fun. Yeah, I think you'll like how it turns out. Because a lot of those late round guys, yeah, like you said, it's like, whoa, he could be a tight end 3 and maybe he hits for you. But if you have 3 or 4 of those that you say the same thing about and like every week you're probably just going to get base level points there and you're going to be all right and you're going to get some spike weeks. So tight end position's the worst. I hate that position.
Worse than kicker or obviously
Yeah,
kicker's not really in most of our lineups here, but
no, we don't deal with kickers anymore.
yeah, they don't exist. I noticed that you mentioned Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, but you did not mention Jalen Hurts. Just going a little bit too early or a little uncertainty?
No, I like him. I think the uncertainty is probably going to help you a little bit, right? You're going to get him cheaper. Well, once it's after the draft and everything, and Hurts is the guy, his ADP is going up a couple rounds. Like I'm taking him over Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is a little overvalued right now, but I think Trey Lance is fun, and the idea of Trey Lance makes sense, and it could be Kyler Murray kind of when he broke out. That's similar to what I see there. But yeah, Hurts. I guess that goes back to not stacking, right? And I'm getting a little bit more value on Goddard and Devontae Smith, maybe. I don't know why I'm not. I think I'm still drafting Hurts, but not at the level of those two guys.
Yeah. I think that he probably doesn't stand out as much of a value, especially because Justin Fields is a couple rounds behind him, and they're, I think, similar in how the season could go well for them. So I can understand how the value on Fields kind of overshadows Jalen Hurts. If we knew for sure that Jalen Hurts was the full season starter for the Eagles this year, though, just based on what he's done so far, I mean, he should probably be going ahead of Joe Burrow in these drafts. I'll be interested to see, I guess, what happens if the Eagles don't draft a quarterback in the first round. And I don't know. I don't think I would bet on them doing so. So I've certainly been drafting plenty of Jalen Hurts so far, and we've seen what the week to week upside is.
Yeah, if they don't get another quarterback, right, and then they have all this draft capital and they could take a wide receiver early. You add another receiver to the offense, and it's only Hurts. Yeah, and free agency, they're probably going to add a receiver too. So I just think it's going to be a better situation for him. He just seems like a leader. He seems like a guy that coaches love and the players love. So I just don't like the opposite of Wentz, right? It seemed like players just absolutely hate him, but Hurts is just like this nicest guy, and yeah, he's kind of gained the trust of definitely the team.
At least they didn't hate him enough to do so publicly. They just did so as unnamed sources.
Yeah, there you go.
So maybe he's not a totally bad dude. But actually, now that he plays for Washington, he's a totally bad dude.
Get to play him twice. Yeah.
It's like it definitely feels a lot less. It hurts me a lot less than when Donovan McNabb got traded from Philly to Washington, because that was like peak. I'm still a Donovan McNabb fan, and now all of a sudden he's playing for Washington. I know he's probably tough, but it doesn't feel right to see him go there.
Yeah, McNabb was just like one of our guys, right? I can't say anything bad about him.
Yeah. It's been a little unfortunate how the post-career stuff has gone, but I still have a warm place in my heart for him. So we talked about a lot of player advice, strategy type stuff. And, I'm sure that there are people listening and playing at various levels of involvement. I would think most drafters are not high volume. There's plenty of high volume drafters. To somebody who might be intimidated by the number of people who seem to be high volume drafters, what kind of advice would you have for somebody looking to play who knows that they're not going to be doing 100 entries? Is it stay away from the tournaments and try to do the more 12-person leagues, or is it just try to find differentiating strategies to counteract the number of entries?
I would think before you start, just come up with a number. It's like, I want to do 10 drafts this year. I want to do 20 drafts. Keep it a nice even number, right? 50 or 100 or whatever. Keep it those kind of numbers, and just don't pay attention to other people in your draft rooms. Try to learn from them. Try to learn from Twitter. You're not going to get every draft perfect. That's kind of the way it goes. Yeah, like you said, be a little different. If you're only doing a few, maybe you don't stack, or maybe you stack quarterback with running back, or you just look for different ways that not everyone else is doing the same thing. Or maybe you like some players, so you take them around above ADP, but then also you get some value in there with some other players that drop a round or two. So yeah, I think there's so many ways to play. I think you just want to, if you're just starting out, just have fun. You're not going to learn and without just trying. So you just kind of have to jump in, kind of embrace it, have fun with it. And that's what I did my first few years. And that's not, you just kind of grow as you go, learn and grow. It's hard to win money in any fantasy league. It's hard to win in DFS. It's hard to win in best ball. It's not all roses out there. You have to put in the effort, and you have to at least get your feet wet a little bit.
Yeah. Don't overinvest. Don't put 10 entries into the big board and say, I'm playing this because I'm going to win $50,000. Almost all of us are not going to win that. So If that's the goal, then you have to set it a little bit lower. But I like that there are so many different ways to enter and try to get used to it before you chase something like that. And there's nothing wrong with just playing at a fun level too, as long as you don't over invest. Similar to sports betting, now that more of us are getting the chance to do that, just make sure that you don't get yourself into financial trouble trying to chase big prizes.
Yeah, I definitely think the $5 entries, DraftKings sometimes has $3, and then $10. Like, I would chase those kind of tournaments. Those are the ones I'd play. You don't need to play the $25 tournament.
Mhm.
Like, I know the $1 million, it's catchy. It's just a marketing thing, right? You want to win the $1 million, but it's a tough tournament. So if I have $200, I don't think I'm putting 8 entries into that. Like, I'm $200. I'd rather do 40 entries in a $5 contest and learn how to play, and then adjust. So it's funny you said that, because I'm pretty open. I share like a lot of my wins, and I also share a lot of my losses. I'm wearing the draft shirt, but I don't know if you remember a few years ago, they had like their bigger contest. I think it was $125. Can't remember the name of it. Can't remember the name of it. It was the biggest contest. I thought I was smart. I thought I was playing BestBall for a few years. I thought I could do well. I did this whole, like, basically took my wife out for dinner, did this whole presentation, like, hey, this is guaranteed. There's going to be overlay in this. I'm going to kill it. Can we take out this loan for it? And like this, like, I share this because I'm pretty open and stuff, but that was one of my biggest mistakes I've ever made. So I took like this 401k loan out for a few $1,000s to try to, like, oh, this is guaranteed I'm getting this money back. So I ended up losing like $5,000 off of that. But the lessons I learned from that over the last few years have been, that's why you see me playing the puppy. That's why you see me maxing the puppy, because I've learned volume and the smaller dollar, like that's my wheelhouse. That's where I'm going to do well at. That's not, I'm not going to make those same mistakes. So you talk about the big dog last year. Yeah, maybe I should have played that, but I played 0 entries in that. So it was a hard lesson, and maybe I'll get back to the point where I'm not taking out loans to enter a big dollar tournament. So that's for anyone starting out. I don't usually share that information, but I don't know why I shared that today. So that's what you get.
I think it means you're in a comfortable spot, but I mean, it's good because there are other lessons like that out there. And I think, all of us probably jump into these money tournaments because we've had some kind of fantasy success and we're like, I'm pretty good at this. I can probably win some money at this. And you got to know that everybody entering these things thinks that. And there are lots of different bankroll situations. And yeah, would I love to take down the $125 entry tournament on FFPC? Sure. But I'm just not in a spot where I can put 100 teams into that. So just from a probability standpoint, I'm almost definitely not going to win that one. But if I can instead take $125 and put 25 entries into a tournament on Underdog, then I got better chances of doing something there.
Yeah, that was a hard lesson I learned. So I just wanted to share that. Don't learn that lesson, anybody out there. It's not worth it.
It also means that, though, on the positive side, we're at the age where we've gone through those money losing lessons and we can still smile about it and talk about it instead of ask for donations.
No, my wife still gives me shit about that. So it's constantly like 4 years later, remember when you did this? It's like, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but now you can be like, yeah, but honey, didn't you enjoy Disneyland?
Yeah, it's all worked out. It's just a process.
There you go. Isn't everything? He is a best ball and DFS strategy leader. He is at James Brimacombe on Twitter, and he's giving out more free info on there than he really should be. So you should go follow him, take advantage of that. James, thanks again for coming to join me on here today.
No, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. That'll do it for this Best Ball Friday episode. Find all the shows and the rest of our podcasts on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Head to draftsharks.com now. You can find our initial 2022 projections to help guide your best ball drafting. Just take Chris Carson a little bit ahead of where Jared and Kevin want you to. We also this week kicked off our free Dynasty Prospect Scouting Report series. You can already find our first 5 profiles in there, with more to come basically every day leading up to the NFL draft. And even if you're not a Dynasty player, you can read about the rookies, because some of these guys are going to be playing significant roles in 2022 fantasy football leagues. So for my guest, James Brimacombe, and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.